Welcome to LCS Talks. My name is Kevin Merchandani, and I am the Director of Instruction for K-12. I am joined by my co-host, Adam Wolders, our head of school at Langley Christian School. And I want to welcome you to a two-part podcast series focused on faithfulness with our finances, the legacy of our families, and the future of Langley Christian in 2030 and beyond. And we've been talking all year with our school theme about what it means to abide, to thrive from John 15. And this series will continue that theme in a really powerful and practical way. And as a Christian school, we want to continue to impact our community by equipping our families to thrive. And we're currently in the midst of a capital campaign. And this is a time to reflect on how our finances reflect God's generosity and faithfulness continued across generations. But we also believe that we're invited, all of us, to be a part of God's expanding mission in this community. And so we're really excited to be joined in this two-part series by two trusted experts from our local community. Adam Bornn, who is a certified financial planner with Parallel Wealth, and Lilian Kazaku, who's a notary public with lots of experience working with wills and estates and legacy planning. And together, they are going to help us explore how we can honor God with our finances and to make decisions that could shape our families for generations to come. And so we hope that this will not only encourage and equip you, but inspire you to become more and more a part of Langley Christian's story. So, Adam, why don't you help us reflect on the importance of this series that we have ahead?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation as well with these two gentlemen. They're two very faithful members of our school community and very respected in the community for their expertise in the things that they do. And so it's a real privilege to have both Adam and Lillian on. We're in the season of building, and as you know, Kevin, we've been doing a lot of reflecting on who we are. And we know that if you're enrolled here, you're part of this story, this story that's different than if you were, say, a member of a public school. Christian school it's a people, and it's a story unfolding that you belong to. It's not just a building, but the buildings are necessary, and we're in the process of building. And while we're doing that, everybody is talking about affordability. Everybody is talking about these real conversations in the community. I talk to charities, for example, who are talking about there's this real decline in the number of people participating in giving and serving in our communities. And so we get this opportunity to ask both these guys about that.
Well, it'd be great to co-host with you this season, Adam. Looking forward to having your perspective, head of schools, and you've had conversations with members of our community. We want to continue to be faithful. So we're really looking forward to our listeners tuning in to get some really practical advice. And without further ado, here's our first episode with Adam Bornn. Adam Bornn, really excited to chat with you, Adam. Why don't you say hello to our listeners?
Yeah, thanks for having us or me on today.
Yeah, and Adam, we've got Adam Wolders here, of course. Let's say a little hello from Adam Wolders so you can get the two Adam voices distinguished here.
Yeah, this is a conversation I'm quite excited about because I think this is an area that we don't dive into a lot in K-12 education, and there's a hesitancy to write things about financial discipline into our curriculum, and there's all kinds of identity pieces and even just worldview pieces that I think we can unpack here. So this should be fun.
Awesome. Well, Adam Bornn, why don't we have you introduce yourself, help us to get to know you a little bit better and your connection to the community, and maybe just share a little bit of your journey and the work that you do here in the Langley area and really internationally as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. So I have 4 little kids that all are now at the school. So K 2, 4, 6, and so we're very ingrained in the school here, and had been here since our eldest was in kindergarten. So I love the community, love that. Married to Stephanie, who is a full-time mom, and so she takes kind of care of the family and the kids on the most part. And yeah, I run a financial planning business here in Langley, BC. Got into financial planning straight out of university. So I went to Trinity Western, did a business degree there. Had no idea what I was going to do other than I knew I enjoyed business. And third year, kind of got introduced to financial planning, and from there, really engaged in it and saw the potential in it. And so went that route, kind of started door knocking back in 2006. And yeah, today we have 12 staff team and kind of operate coast to coast. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a job for younger LCS goers right now, but more of the YouTube stuff, which we can dive into later and talk about that, because I think that's every kid's dream. And it was not my dream, but that's where we're at. So
Tell me really quick how that materialized. Your financial planning, parallel wealth, I believe. Yeah. And you are doing this work, and then suddenly you start producing YouTube videos that get a pretty humble following. It's you've got quite a few viewers, and I myself have watched a few of them. It's good stuff. How did that happen?
So that was kind of driven out of COVID times. Um, so essentially, the online video content during 2020 couldn't meet with clients, but we're still getting paid. The way our business model was at that time, we're getting paid by clients. So it's like, hey, well, we're getting paid. We have to support you and show you advice and that kind of stuff. So we actually that summer created something that we call our financial masterclass, which is a series of about 130 videos that I created just with basic financial education. So really, I always say our financial masterclass is what everyone should learn in high school.
Mm.
From there, we started releasing the odd video onto YouTube. And so September 1st, 2020 was our first YouTube video. And it was something called like how to make $1 million TFSA or something. Like total clickbait, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, YouTube is clickbait.
Yeah.
And then you realize it's not. So anyway, just consistency.
Mm.
And then April of 21, our first video kind of hit the algorithm. And that was around the Canadian pension plan. And then from there, just continued to grow. So we went from, 25 subscribers to 250 to 2,500, like within weeks. And it just kept growing. And yeah, and so now we have, I don't know, just under 140,000, I think, subscribers. And yeah, we're getting like 15 to 20,000 views a day. So it's, yeah, I never would have imagined. And, compliance in our industry is pretty sticky too. So it's hard to get past that. So, we found kind of a road path for that works well on educating the Canadian public, staying within our compliance and scope that way, but really adding value. Like it was just getting content out there and helping people out. And it's turned out that, when you provide free advice, people actually want to work with you. So we've gone from myself and a part-time admin to now, 12 staff. So
Yeah. Well, you clearly found a need and you've been addressing a problem. What are some of those problems? And maybe if you can tell us a little bit about what drives the work that you do. What's your why in this work of the financial world?
yeah, I think what got me into it originally, I enjoyed the finance piece of it. My mentor through Trinity was a gentleman by the name of Billy Van Herko, who owns Super Safe Group here in the Lower Mainland. And so he got me into investing and stuff. And I still remember going into his office and he said, hey, do you want to buy some Manulife shares? And I said, sure, but I don't have any money. And so he's like, well, I'll buy it. And if we make money, I'll write you a check. If we lose money, you write me a check. And I'm like, are you buying it? He goes, yeah. I'm like, perfect. I'm in. And 3 days later, he called me and he had a check for $2,300 for me. I was like, investing is pretty cool. And so that's part of it, part of the journey. The other part of the journey is just family history. So, yeah, my grandpa grew up, did very well, business owner, owned many businesses throughout Saskatchewan. And then kind of in his early 40s, had basically a bucket of money that would have, been generational wealth at that point, but always dreamt of owning a farm. And so he invested in a farm. A couple of years later, lost everything. And so that kind of lack of financial knowledge, on like he was such a smart business guy, but like to put all your eggs in one basket, and just like there was zero financial planning behind it, right? Very like smartest business guy I've ever met, but just that small piece of it. And so that kind of drove me into it, like, how do you actually, start a business, run a business, create wealth, and protect that wealth, and then take that wealth and nurture. My grandpa was phenomenal at giving, at being generous. Anyone around him would say he's probably the most generous guy. But as soon as you're not wise with your money, that generosity naturally will drop off if you don't have the money. So, yeah, so those kind of two events kind of led me into the financial planning space.
Yeah. What would you say is your why driving the work that you currently do?
You know what? It's shifted. I would say now the why is seeing my team grow in a way where we're an employee-run company now. So all of my staff have the opportunity to buy in. So it's really there's generosity on many levels, and not that this is a generosity standpoint for me, but I want all my employees to own into the company. We're a growing company. There's opportunity there. And I think it can actually create wealth and possibly generational wealth, not just for me and my family, but for all these families and people that work for me. So the why is really like building the team. And then from the client standpoint, that'd be the second piece of the why is Canadians don't know how to manage money, retire, and not the money management part of it, but I have money. Like, well, how do I retire? What do I do with this? Like, what does this all mean? I worked for 40 years and I got to this point. What do I do now? So the big why is helping Canadians in low, middle, upper class, doesn't matter where you come from, get into and through retirement in a much more efficient way, right? Like everyone wants to pay less tax, they don't know how, and so our team does a really good job at walking people through that.
You, your grandfather's story, I've heard so many stories over the years of that, and it reminds me, somebody sort of said once, I think it was in, I was trying to remember, but I think it was in Morgan Housel's book, Psychology of Money, about talks about how in some ways generating wealth or making money is way easier than keeping it, especially keeping it over the long term.
Way easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen it with clients too. Um, you know, 10, 20, $100 million net worths down to almost zero. And then they come to us and they're like, we need, we're building up again, but we need to do it different this time.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about like generational wealth. You've hinted at wealth creation as something that can be very positive. What we find from time to time in K to 12 education, particularly at a policy level, is there is a moralizing of wealth creation. In fact, there are some that would say that wealth creation is not something to be desired. We should eliminate this. We should put caps on it. We should evenly distribute wealth. Um, talk to us a little bit about that, in terms of this tension that people have around this idea. What kind of conversations are you hearing, and what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think let's just look at what we're doing at LCS right now, right? Like without wealth creation, you don't build new middle schools. You don't do additions to elementary schools. Like it typically is the people that have accumulated wealth. It's, 80 to 90% of your funding for the school comes from that wealth creation, right?
In terms of that capital.
Now, it doesn't mean if you've created wealth, you're also generous. That there's not a direct correlation, obviously, there. But yeah, the whole wealth creation thing, obviously, having wealth can be a negative thing for sure. I think if money is used properly, especially in our context here, a faith-driven context, it can be life-changing for many. So I've never heard someone that has money say it's a bad thing. And typically when people have had tough times, it's like, well, I don't want a lot of money because it'll just create more problems. And it can for sure. I think wealth in the right, and, it goes back to the parable of, having money, multiplying that money and nurturing and take care of it well is what God wants us to do, right? If you sit on little and do little with little, that serves nobody, right? So I always go back to that. Like again, I think it's more opinion piece than anything, to be honest with you. But
As we've been talking to people, and it's a timely process because you're trying to talk to as many people as you can about our middle school project and raising money for it. And there's this tension, and one of the tensions that some folks have is, we're just making ends meet. We've got a lot of, and we have more outcome than income, and things are pretty tough. And there's this tension. And I'm reminded of Matthew 12, and Jesus points out this woman who's giving, I think it's 2 coins, and he makes the point of saying, hey, look at this woman has given out of her poverty, not her abundance. And this is a reminder to all of us that generosity can be at any level.
Yeah.
And what I'm curious about is this tension that some people feel. I've certainly felt this in my life, that there's seasons where I can be generous and I can tithe and I can give to my church and I can do other things. But there's definitely been times when I felt like I can't do that. Like, how do I be strategic about giving? How do we be strategic even about saving?
yeah, I think Steph and I, like my wife and I, talk about that a lot. And that like people that aren't generous when they have little won't be generous when they have a lot. Like money doesn't make you a generous giver. Never will. That would be the 1%, right? So I think it's going back to your story that you just talked about there. Like I go to Village Church. We're doing a capital campaign as well right now, and I was talking to a lady, we were volunteering with her in Sunday school last week, and she was telling me her story, and like basically bankrupt last summer, going through divorce, and two teenage kids kind of leaving the church. And she goes, Adam, you know what? Hey, like we did our pledge Sunday last week, you walk up to the front with your pledge card. And she goes, the ability to walk up there, and sure, my number wasn't big, but it was something, right? And that's what it's about. It's about being involved in it. And she goes, I'm a part of the project, right? And it's not if there's $1 or $1,000,000, it doesn't matter. You're part of the project, right? I think that's why, everyone goes through, like, when Steph and I got married, I had a ton of debt. Steph was, she was my sugar mom at that point, really. Like, she was a nurse, making money, had money saved. And we didn't have a lot of money, but we gave faithfully. And so I think, like you said, like you have those things, everyone has those highs and lows in their financial, but I think it's about, like, are you giving in the low times? Like, have you carved out God's resources back for him and given back, right? And I truly believe that if you don't do that when you have little, it won't change. If you have the mentality of like, when I have money, then I'll give. You won't. I promise you that.
Yeah. We've been doing quite a bit of work with our curriculum to look at, well, how do we actually equip this generation of learners to be generous?
Yeah.
And what does it look like at a curricular level to think about everything from taxes to investing? And I think our teachers are doing some of that work. They're doing some of that work theologically, like the churches are. They're doing some of that work practically. And that's obviously a big invitation for our community to be working in partnership with us, because at the end of the day, parents are the primary caregivers, and their financial practices and habits are what are picked up by our kids. But do you know a little bit of the work biblically and theologically when we talk about Adam Walters raised Mark 12 as a bit of an invitation to think about the woman and her generosity? Before we get to Mark 12, I think that's verse 41 to 44, we have this teacher of the law, the one who knows the law, and he comes to Jesus and he says, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus obviously tactfully says, well, there's love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And those together, that's where the law hinges, right? And what I love about what we've been doing as a school is we're trying to help our community to learn how to be purposely disciplined. And there's these habits of practice of loving God and loving neighbors that become ingrained in the work that we do. So, Adam, Bornn, wondering if you could share with us what are some of those financial practices that build these habits of faith formation, whether that's in the family or in the household, or perhaps there's even things that we might want to consider in our school community to be purposefully disciplined with how we spend our money, with how we actually develop this heart of generosity. What does that look like?
Yeah, probably a few layers there. Having 4 young kids is definitely starting to teach them, like, okay, we have, you've earned money. For instance, like my 11-year-old daughter, our neighbor was having a garage sale on the weekends. Of course, she quickly baked cookies, got out there, made $24 in like 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, but now you made 24. Like, what are we giving? What are we saving? What are we spending kind of idea, right? So I think it does start in the home at a young age of what that looks like, the principles behind that.
Mm.
Yeah, I think going back to, you can't ingrain this in people, right? And that's why I think if you start young, I think there's a huge benefit to that. Um, yeah, I'm not kind of sure what else to say.
Yeah. How important would you think it is then that kids see examples of sound money management or generosity in their school experience? Not just the home, but also school experience.
Yeah, well, see it or actually like learn it education wise.
Well, for example, like one of the things that we debated was, should kids be doing donut sales to raise money for a band trip? Like, these were some of the questions we were asking as a board and leadership, because we charge tuition, and and do we always want kids going back or do we want to be asking kids for more money and these sorts of things? Could we just build tuition so that it covers all these things? And one of the strongest objections to that was, no, like, kids need to see and feel and experience what it's like to earn towards something, but also to give towards something. That was really important to a lot of the parents that we asked.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like, I think it's grade 6. So I think my daughter did this year where you do they have to come up and make stuff and then they sell it.
Yeah, market day.
Market day.
Yeah.
that is, to me, that's one of the best things that a school could do for their kids, because I know they will learn more from that experience and take that. Like if you think about now your life at our age,
Yeah.
like what's more important, like trigonometry or that, or whatever else they're learning. Like there's obviously massively important things we learn in school, but the project of that, like creating your own business. How does business work? How do you collect payment, right? Like how many kids are going to graduate and have never like collected payment? Or they don't even know, like, especially nowadays, like cash, like what is that? Like just
That's
zero,
cash,
right?
yeah.
That's cash, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a fundamental principle that we need to learn, right?
Yeah.
So market day, like that kind of stuff, I wish every grade every year did that, because I think that would teach kids more about money management, how the world operates, better than sitting in a classroom learning it. But the principle's there, right? And so, and it's nice that it's bringing it out of the classroom and into practicality. Going back to your comment, yeah, I think the more kind of fundraisers, let's go out there and be enterprise driven. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, bringing in faith into those business conversations for kids at a young age. I remember a friend of mine, we were just at their house a couple summers ago, and his daughter pulls out a bunch of these flowers and sits on the side of the curb, and she just writes free on there. And I thought that was such an interesting business experiment because she had people coming up to her and going, "Oh, free flowers. Here's a $20 bill. Here's a," well, however, I think she probably made about 75 bucks in about 25 minutes. And you learn a lot when you can process with your kids from those business encounters and those moments of like, how did you manage the money? How did you manage the sense of what we talk about joy and hospitality? How do you do that in a service oriented way? So I'm curious, Adam, what have you learned in terms of working with people when it comes to money, which often in Christian contexts can either be breeding one of two emotions, fear or discomfort. How do you maintain that posture of engagement and conversation with probably the most fearful and uncomfortable things to talk about in the family and the household?
Yeah, I think it's true. Like, well, they're talking about finances and there's talking about giving, right? So if I go to my professional world where, our clientele, believers, non-believers, it's a broad range of people there. Even our budget form that we have that we send clients, it's like giving, right? And it has a set of 10%. So we can say, here's what you should be doing in each category. It's like 10%. We get clients all the time. It's like, why do you have giving in there? And we'll talk about it, right? Like my other two business partners graduated from Trinity and Believers, and so it's easy to have that conversation. I'm always open to it, and we've done some videos around it as well, around like giving and donating and the impact that it has, because we all enjoy a lot of the programs and benefits that we have in society here, but a lot of that is driven through giving, right? Like our government does not like provide most of the services that we have on a daily basis. I mean, even at LCS, right? You look at why do parents send their kids to LCS? Well, they see a benefit to it. Well, okay, but you're not giving to the middle school project or the elementary school project. So you believe in what we're doing here, but you're not kind of putting your resources or God's resources behind it. So, it's just like, I like to, when I have a financial conversation with someone, always try and relate it to that, right? So like, LCS family would be my target on that one, right? It's okay, well, you send your kids here and are you enjoying the experience? Yeah. Okay, well, you're not involved in the school like in the capital campaign. So why? Like there's got to be a why. So what's your why, right? Um, the financial. I've always grown up. We talked about finances a bit in my family. I love talking to people about finances and like challenging them on stuff. But I think it's just doing it day after day for 20 years now. Like yeah, but
Yeah.
it's
You're very comfortable with it.
very comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'll call people out. Like even to the point where, village, when we're doing our capital campaign, like I'm the type that will put the text together and stuff says you can't send that to like any guy in the church. Is like, you need to give courageously, like, and like encouraging them, praying over them. And like, it's a good text, but it's like, yeah, I'll challenge anyone on like, the problem I have with money in our culture, and I know you guys want to talk about this here too, but in our culture, someone says, I can't give that $1,000, but then they'll go have a brand new truck and they go to Cactus Club once a week and they do this and they do that. And it's like, so can you not do it, or you're just not prioritizing it? Right.
Yeah.
And I think our culture, I honestly believe, like Christian, non-Christian, doesn't matter where you stand. our culture needs to shift in the priorities of where we actually place our money.
Yeah.
I read an article, I can't remember where now, but it was titled, "Who is this generation's Rockefellers?" And it was lamenting, and everybody knows this, right? The number of people or the number of people who are giving to charities and nonprofits has fallen off a cliff in the last 20 years in Canada, the United States, everywhere.
Yeah.
And yet giving amounts have never been higher. So there's fewer people giving more. And so what this article was really lamenting was in this current generation, if this trend continues, like who is going to give to public capital projects? Who is going to support philanthropy? Who is going to support the charities that we need to provide the services that others can't?
Yeah.
And so therefore, I think one of the hidden benefits that one gets from an LCS education is you actually do get to go to school with and grow up around people who are modeling this in really, I think, healthy ways. There's a health benefit to being somebody who's generous and who gives that I don't think we talk enough about. So I'm kind of curious, how would you suggest that schools deal with this sort of tension that exists also in churches around discomfort? Like, is there any practical advice you might have for teachers in terms of how do you deal with the discomfort of talking about people's money because their identity, their experience with scarcity or poverty might be all kind of wrapped in that?
I think two things. I think a lot of times it's the person bringing up the topic. So it's you guys, it's the teacher, it's me that are actually more uncomfortable with it than the person on that. Or we pre-posture ourselves or pre-posture the person we're talking to, which may not be correct.
We make an incorrect assumption.
Yeah, I think that is a lot of the time happens. So it's just if you come with, hey, like we're going to talk about money. I think the other thing when it comes to money, people think they're going through things on their own, right? Very private about stuff. I think that generation of I'm private, we don't talk about money. I think that's our parents or even grandparents' generation is starting to shift. We work primarily with 55 to 70-year-olds, so that the baby boomer generation. And I would say 95% of them are very open to talk about money. And they're that way because they saw the drawbacks of their parents not talking about money.
Yeah. So how do we break that silence, and what level of transparency should we have with our kids? Like, what would you be talking about
Oh, full
with your
transparency.
kids?
Yeah, I talk about everything. So like from giving to the school to giving to the church to, we're building a house right now, what it costs, right? Every little thing that we do, like how much does it cost? We go on a trip and Mason, my 9-year-old son, he's always like, well, what did that cost? So I'll break it down for him. Yeah, it costs this much. Here's how much I have to work to get that. He's like, oh, okay. So like money is not a taboo word. And I think that's a good place to start for parents is like, talk about money. Even if money is challenging in your household and it's hard to pay every bill. That's what I grew up in. Like my parents had money, but there was no extra money at the end of the month ever. But it wasn't a taboo word in our house either. And I think that's the posture that parents need to take is let's be open about this. Because if it's taboo to you, then what are you teaching your kid, right? They're not going to know how to handle money. They're not going to know like what to do with their money when they get it. And then see, like, they're going to get to a point where a lot of our clients do at 55, they call us, they're like, we're here, but we have no idea, A, how we got here, and B, what to do from here. So you're failing your kids, right? And so yeah, I think step one is just be open, have a conversation. So the next time you guys are sitting down at the dinner table, like talk about money, talk about how much you make with your kids. Like, what's the risk in that?
Yeah. What's your best questions for the dinner table then, Adam? What questions should we be asking with our kids so that there's no secrets, only surprises when it comes to money?
Yeah, I would ask your kids, like, how much do you think this costs, right? How much do you think the last trip costs? How much do you think mom or dad make on a monthly basis? How much? Yeah, I'm sure maybe you don't disclose everything, but like just general terms, right? So they can kind of start putting the concept of, because, a kid sees, the new Switch 2 just came out. It's like, well, I want that. It's whatever, $500-600. Okay, well, do you know how long mom and dad have to work to save that? Or to pay for that, right? And there's taxes. So step one is talk about how much things cost. Step two, you need to talk about taxes, right? When I got in the business, how many younger people that were starting businesses that went bankrupt? And, I could count on my, hand or right off the top of my head, I think 5 or 6. where they started a business, they did well, but they didn't pay tax. Right? So it's like, oh, I made 100 grand this year. I spent it all, bought a new truck, did this. And then CRA comes along in, April, and they're like, yeah, well, we need 40 grand from you. And they're like, I don't have it. Right. And literally bankrupt companies. So start talking to kids about tax and just like our tax system and how it works. And I get it. Not every parent watching this understands how it works either. That's part of the problem. But, Chat GPT, Google, whatever it is, like start educating yourself and then start educating. And I think for a lot of people, educate yourself, right? Like it's hard to educate anyone around anything if you don't know yourself. So start working on it yourself. And I'll say if anyone's listening to this and they need like, where do I start? I'll say like email Kevin or Adam and I can connect you guys with, like, we have a financial masterclass. We call it, we sell it for $100, but it's free to anyone that wants it. Happy to give that away. But basically I always say it's everything we should have learned in high school. So it's, financial planning 101, essentially, how to save, how to pay off debt, how to save for retirement, what is like an RSP and a TFSA and CPP and OAS and all these things that we need to know and know how they work. So if you need some more financial education, which I think most people do, just email these guys and we'll get you connected with that.
That's amazing. Thank you for being generous with your gifts and just making that available to our community.
So let me put you on the hot seat there in this conversation around how to talk about money. Should pastors and elders boards in churches know who's giving and who's not giving?
No. Well, so your executive leader, so if you're in a capital campaign, your head pastor and your executive leader should know, obviously. Your elders, like I just joined the elder board at Village Church. I don't want to know who's giving because it would actually bother me. Because if you're only giving X and I know your lifestyle over here is Y and it doesn't align, it'll frustrate me. And that's not on me to judge you. So I don't want to be part of that. And maybe that's a me thing. But no, I don't think in general pastors it should be your finance person at the church and your executive leadership person. But elders should not know. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So mostly people that are in the need to know in terms of meeting the financial goals or fundraising goals of your charity.
Yeah. Like joining the elder board now, I'm very involved in the financing of the building. So whatever we need to finance, like helping with that. But yeah, I have no, I want to know what our numbers are, at the high level. But yeah, eldership, leadership should not know what people are giving. I think that should be to a couple people within an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me like the conversation evolves over your lifespan. There's different decisions to be made. There's there's a different level of learning required when you're walking through your first job. If you're high school students listening to us right now, talk about retirement and over to your midlife and the kind of decisions that it takes to say, hey, I'm moving from just maybe it's a single family dwelling to now I'm in a multi-generational context because I've got aging family. That conversation evolves over our lifespan and into I'm in my later years. I'm thinking about retirement. Is it coming up in 5 years? Is my pension plan going to work? And there's a number of things that I'm sure you probably know about that we maybe have heard, but I would love to hear from you, Adam. What's your best wisdom for maybe each of those different stages of let's help some of those high school kids with their first early jobs. They're getting into post-secondary education, to the midlife, to kind of later in your career, trying to really set yourself up. Obviously, all this informed by God ordering our steps and seeking His wisdom. What's your best wisdom for each of those different stages across our lifespan?
Yeah, I think the first stage would be from like, I'll call it, 12 to 18 or 20. When you can go get a job or part-time, maybe it's, I would say like I started reffing hockey at 10 or 11, right? Making 10, 15 bucks a game back then. But by the time I turned 16, I had thousands in the bank. I could buy my own car. I could pay my insurance. I could do that it gave me that freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So start talking to your kids around that. I think that it teaches them how to save. Now, it also teaches them to go work, right? The work ethic, and then start giving too. Because if you're earning money now, we can teach you how to give and put money aside. So it teaches that principle at a young age. I'll say from, early 20s up into your early 30s, as you're maybe starting a family, starting your career. You're probably not going to have a lot of extra money in the bank account. Um, the biggest thing, and even heading into your 40s, is don't worry about what everyone else around you is doing. I think we live in a culture where we always want what my neighbor has. And I can tell you, as a financial planner that actually sees under the veil of thousands of Canadians, your average person that's driving two brand new vehicles and has a nice house and stuff, they're barely able to afford the payments.
Mm.
That's the average. But it's the neighbor that has the old car and does stuff basic. They're the ones that are going to retire at 45 or 50, 55 kind of idea, right? So don't go chasing the Joneses, essentially. Live within your means, save, give, be fruitful. Like, figure out like the core, the heart of your money when you earn a dollar, like what you want to do with that. And really, especially, if you get married, have a spouse, that have that conversation with them. I think too many couples, especially early on, like finances are tight. You have kids right away, and then finances are even more tight. And you throw it off. You don't talk about finances because it's hard, right? You can't. It's like, well, we don't have enough to pay bills or go on the trip or do whatever. I think the more you can talk about finances when times are tough, the stronger your marriage will be. I mean, the data is out there. Money is the number one reason for divorce. So going into marriage, knowing that A, that's the number one reason for divorce, and B, you're going into the toughest, probably statistically, the toughest financial times of your life are the first 10 years of marriage. Like that's a tough spot to be. So pray into it, right? Work with your spouse through this stuff. Creating that conversation. Like Steph and I, we talk about money every day, not in like a strategic way, just it comes up every day. Like it's just an open conversation in our house. It's never a hidden agenda. Have joint finances. Never, ever, ever, ever have individual bank accounts. Just simple things like that in your 20s into your 30s. Like if you get married, join finances. Yeah, like her money's your money, his money's your money. Like you guys are one team, and then you need to work with that going forward. How are we going to give? How are we going to spend? How are we going to save? What are our goals for 5-10 years? Because what you want to do in 5-10-15 years from now starts today, right? Both from a missional standpoint, from a financial, what kind of house do we want to be in? What kind of family do we want to have? All of that. Fast forward, and this is a long-winded answer, but fast forward into your late 40s, 50s, you start thinking about retirement. It's important to know when you can retire. Like a lot of people, I would say you should get a retirement plan built out by a professional, like 5-10 years before you retire. Because maybe you have to work longer, maybe you can retire earlier, or maybe you're doing stuff really poorly, right? So get some direction. We go to counseling around marriage and that kind of stuff. Well, again, like go to counseling about finances. That's this retirement planner, right? Sit down with them, figure out like, what does this look like? And then get educated around when should you start CPP? What is CPP? A lot of people don't even know what the Canadian pension plan is, how it works, old age security. So how does it work? And then when should I take it? How does it integrate with my RSP and TFSA and all these other accounts that I've been able to build up? Like, what does it all mean? So yeah, if you think, well, I want to retire at 60, then at 50, you need to start digging into this stuff pretty deep just to make sure that runway from 50 to 60, that you're making the right financial decisions.
Yeah, we must get some things right in the church, but we must also be maybe a little bit unaware of some of the mistakes that we might be making. What are you hearing in Christian circles in particular across our lifespan where we may just have to refine some of our thinking and decision making to maybe set ourselves up better? Is it we just need more education? Do we need better networks? So,
I think
what
that's a
mistakes
lot.
consider?
It's education, even in the Christian world. It's, how does it help me? Right. I don't want to put money where it's not helping me. And we're seeing this
I
first.
want an ROI.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
even like here at the school, like, okay, we're building a middle school. It's like, well, my kids are in high school already or beyond. So it's not going to affect me. So I'm not throwing money in. It's like, okay. So like, that's, I think a big thing is like, if it doesn't affect me, I'm not giving to it. And it's like, okay, well, do you give to World Vision or wherever, like that doesn't affect you, but you're still doing it. Right. So I don't know. I'd go on and on about this stuff, but,
I had a conversation yesterday with a parent in the school, was catching up with them after church and said, and their child is graduating. said, because my kid had this experience and this was so instrumental in their Christian formation, I want to give to the school so that other children in the future can have a similar experience.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love hearing those stories.
And that's the heart of God in giving, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. Even at like for Village, to loop back to them, but we're raising for the Surrey National Ministry Center. Well, the Langley location, which I go to, we're not really affected directly, but all of our content comes out of there. Men's ministry, women's ministry, youth, all that will be out of the new ministry center. But the main feedback from people at Langley, like, it doesn't affect me. I'm not giving because I don't see it. I don't feel it. And so I think going back to like just the Christian circle, like that's what I'm seeing firsthand with people is both, at LCS, at Village, but if it doesn't affect me, I'll pass.
Yeah. Are you seeing any differences in how younger generations are engaging with money, the questions that they're asking, the problems that they're feeling the weight of while they're coming to you to seek your wise counsel and wisdom?
I don't deal with a lot of young people anymore, but I know just talking to our clients, because it's their kids or even grandkids at this point are going through that. I think the biggest thing, the younger generation, I'll say 20 to 35-year-olds are facing right now is just the cost of living, right? Like to buy a house, if you're in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, like it's expensive, right? So it's like, well, where are we moving to? Because we're not going to be able to stay around here. It's also put a lot of financial pressure on parents, because a lot of our clients are saying, hey, we want our kids to stay in Vancouver because we want to be near them. And if they have grandkids, we want to be near grandkids. So it's how do we come up with $2-5 million to help them get into the market too. But yeah, I think for kids, for the younger, I shouldn't say kids, younger generation, it's definitely housing. Like, how can I actually afford to? And I think a lot of them, they just give up, right? People are living with their parents a lot longer. Is that because they can't afford to move out, or they have no motivation? Like, it's just like, we'll never get there anyway, so who cares? That's the big challenge. And then just the cost of living in general. But on the other side of the coin, Steph and I went out for dinner Friday to King Taps here in Langley, brand new. It's packed with young people. Like, I would say half the tables were between 20, 30-year-olds. So they're out there dropping $50 to $100 on a meal at the same time. So have they given up on the house? So they're just going to enjoy the now. Like, I think there's a lot of that happening right now too.
So that leads a little bit into curiosity I have in terms of how to, how to teach young people about the emotions that money might bring and the need for emotional discipline. I mean, you must see a range of emotions that people have with regards to their finances.
Yeah. So again, dealing with, I'll touch on retirees who we deal with. I always say retirement's 10% financial, 90% psychological, right? It's psychological, emotional, entering retirement, spending your own money, that kind of stuff. But even, for the younger generation, it's, if we teach young kids one thing, it would be compound interest, right? They learn it typically
Yeah, they do.
the wrong way through credit cards. It's like, well, if you don't pay a credit card, 21%, and it compounds on each other.
Yeah.
So, every 3 to 4 years, your debt will double, right? So it's like, oh, okay, that's how compound interest works. Well, what if it worked for you versus against you?
Yeah.
I always say if someone between the ages of 15 and 20 can learn one thing, it's compound interest, because they learn very quickly, it can go both ways. And so if they can get themselves on the right side of the coin, which it's easy to do for most people, drastic impact. Yeah.
So thinking about that 19-year-old or that 18 or 19-year-old who's coming out of high school and they're graduated from Lane Christian School, and what would be like the top 3 things that because everything I've read and everybody I've heard and everybody who've done this well has said, start young.
Yeah.
And what would you say starting young looks like for that high school graduate?
So I think a big thing nowadays is don't go into a ton of debt for university. I think go get education. I think you need a post-secondary education. I went to Trinity. I was blessed with a scholarship, a full ride scholarship. Not because I'm smart, just because I fell into dumb luck. So Trinity is a phenomenal place, but it's very expensive. Would I recommend going in and, doing education there, becoming a pastor, leaving with $150,000 in debt and making 45 as a pastor? I don't think that's a wise financial decision. I think there's other ways you can go about the education. I'm not saying don't go to Trinity, but I think there's different ways to get educated. So don't go into, and there's tons of research out there around this. Like the data's out there. It's not my opinion. It's the data that's out there saying don't go into heavy debt, because if you go into heavy debt, again, you're starting your adult life in a ton of debt. You're starting your marriage, if you get marriage, in debt. Like it's a bad place to start. So
And I think people like Dave Ramsey have been saying that for decades now.
Mhm.
Don't go into don't go into debt for education if you can avoid it, unless you're going to make a lot of money as a result of the education you're getting.
yeah,
Mhm.
and he even says now though, like even if you're gonna make a lot of money, there's other ways to get, like community college. You can still get a lot of your education to become a doctor. Just do the final stuff at maybe more prestigious university. So I think that's a big thing. So if you start your adult life in debt, that's a tough goal. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be get a job, right? Like so many, I know your kids are just stepping into that age bracket there, Adam, but like your kids should be working. Like I told my daughter, when you turn 13, you're working. I don't care
Well,
what you're doing.
we started at 12.
There you go.
And same thing, refereeing soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect thing. Like, yeah, and they get paid well, right? And so, you get a job. Too many times we see like clients we're working with, their kids or grandkids are in their 20s, not going to school, not working. They're just living at home, playing video games, whatever it is. So, force your kids to go get a job, right? Learn how to work hard, earn money, and then manage that money. The third thing would be to actually like take a step to educate yourself or help your kids get educated. Again, that financial masterclass, we gift it to our clients to give to their kids, their grandkids, that kind of stuff. We want to educate. Like I think education is a huge piece because, again, we're not getting it in the school system, to the level that we should be getting at.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of the problem the school system's always struggled from a little bit, and this is going to maybe sound judgmental, but finances and wealth creation are not exactly things that people who typically go into K-12 education are really passionate and knowledgeable about. And the nature of a lot of our jobs when we get in at 23 or 24 is we're kind of told that we've got the golden handcuffs of the teacher pension and we're going to be okay regardless of the financial decisions we make. And for the most part, that proves true. So it's some cases, I think it's the wrong people in schools to be teaching the things.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because a teacher walks in with in the public system, a defined benefit pension plan. Work this many years, earn that, and you're set at 60 on 65, whenever they want to retire. That's, I think the day is like 1 in 20 or 30 adults in Canada have some sort of defined benefit pension plan. And so you're asking the people with the golden handcuffs to teach younger people about, well, you're not going to have these same, the golden ticket essentially. So figure it out. So yeah, I think what it comes down to though is creating content material around this and just start, like we need an education minister essentially to say, we need this in our school. Let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never happened to this point.
So I'm no, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this one. So I've made my kids when they hit 19 to start an investment account with the whatever $1,000 they've had, and they've been fortunate to have jobs and actually have that. And just sort of said, hey, no brainer, just put it into a S&P 500 ETF, and then just forget about it. Now, one of my kids doesn't forget about it. He goes in and checks, and he's it's actually kind of cool that he's that engaged with it. What would be like the one thing, a kid graduating from high school has $500 to $1,000 that they've earned from a part-time job.
Yeah.
What would be like the thing they should maybe think about doing?
Yeah, so now we have the first home savings account, FHSA. That's
Yeah.
probably the best account for kids to use. I'm not an expert on it because again, we deal with retirees.
Yeah.
But the first home savings account is essentially you put money into it, you get a tax break like an RSP. So if you make, let's say for kids starting out, let's say you're making even 30,000 a year. If you put 1,000 into the first home savings account, the government looks at it as if you paid or earned 29,000. So you don't pay tax on that 1,000 you put into the first home savings account. And then you can pull it out tax-free when you buy your first home, qualifying home. So you get tax break going in, you get the money tax-free coming out. So it's kind of a combination of your RRSP and TFSA. And I won't make this an educational platform here, but learn what both of those are. But the FHSA is kind of this in-between that came out a few years ago. You can put $8,000 a year. We're seeing a lot of parents and grandparents contributing for their kids and grandkids to help them get started. Because again, put money in, the kid is the one that gets a tax break. But again, there's still a bit of a tax break there, especially if your kid's working. And it's fully tax-free coming out. So that would be the first place to start, for sure. If you're younger, you've never owned a home, the FHSA. The second would be the TFSA. Like typically in RSP, makes sense to start saving into once you're making about $60,000 a year in Canada. If you make less than $60,000, which would be most kids coming out of university or out of high school, save into the TFSA, the tax-free account.
The tax incentive just isn't there.
It's not there. Yeah. Save those contributions for future years when you're making more. And the tax-free savings account, again, is after tax dollars going in there. But as a recent grad or a young person, you're not paying a lot of tax anyway. So, but then when it's in that account, you can invest it in whatever. And again, that's based on how much risk tolerance you have, what your timeline is. There's a lot of factors that you need to look at, but set up a tax-free savings, put money in there, and let it compound, right? Like,
and you don't need a lot of money to do this. You just have to have the discipline.
$25. Yeah. Like, and it goes back to, the whole idea of giving, like just start giving, do something. Doesn't matter the amount. It's the same with savings, right? So start saving, create the habits, right? People that start saving at a young age, they rewire their brain, right? And again, lots of data around like we can actually rewire our brain in certain areas, and saving's one of those. If we can start seeing, rewiring and seeing the benefit of it, and that's why I say if you can start working when you're 12, 13 and start saving money, and then, your parents can set up like a trustee account and actually get that money invested for you. Your parents are paying the tax on it, but you can at least see that money growing, and it starts to rewire your brain of like, oh, okay, I earned $10, but now it's $12. Like I just made $2 for doing nothing other than saving it. Like I want to do more of this, right? And it starts rewiring the brain that way. So it's not the dollar amount, it's the action of actually saving.
Yeah,
on both savings and giving.
100%. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, we started showing our kids their RESPs, and obviously I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So the 6-year-old is starting to see that, graphing it with him, and they're doing lots of graphing. Like he's in kindergarten right now, and so he's getting the visual, and it's connecting with him in a way that he understands. And we're talking about things like interest. Like if we were to buy that toy, and he doesn't have the money, if he's going to buy that, and I'm going to pay for it, I'm going to charge him interest on it, and that's going to cost him more in the long term. And so I think there's some ways to get some of that language to kids, like you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Adam's looking over like you got a great idea for your.
No, you're just way ahead of me, because I had a conversation with my 10-year-old daughter the other day that went something like this. Hey, you know what? Here's an opportunity for you to earn a few dollars. And she looked at me very straight face and said, there's nothing I really need or want to buy, so why would I do that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
We started this year with our kids an allowance, and some people start quite early, but we paid them an allowance every week if they do their chores only, based on their age. So you get the allowance, if you're 10, you get $10 a week. Yeah, is how we structured it. And then we're having them buy a few things that we would typically buy for them. We're having them actually save up and buy. Again, it's the principle of like working, earning money, putting that money aside, giving some of the money, but then using that money to buy stuff and actually seeing and doing the transaction of paying for something. Like, okay, I have $10. I'm going to buy that for $10. And it's typically on Amazon because it's easy. But it's like, okay, no, total's $12, or $11.20 because you got some tax on there. It's like, what's tax? It's the education thing around it, right? So it's kind of like you got to start walking your kids from start to finish, like actually transacting for the thing.
Yeah.
Because tax hits kids every time.
I'm glad you raised that, because I think in the educational psychology world, there's this ongoing debate about the value of allowance, and should you be paying kids for chores and all this sort of thing, and or should are we setting kids up for maybe a more of a transactional mindset if not doing the things that contribute to the household unless I get paid for it. So there's that debate. But I appreciate what you say here, because sounds like it's less about that. It's more about actually teaching kids the financial habits that are going to lead to long-term success.
Yeah, they're not doing any more work now than they were before. Maybe even less, right? But there's something tied to it, right? So throughout the week, Sunday to Friday, they have their chores, dishes, whatever it is, and they're not compensated for that. So that's just like, hey, we need to, put a roof over your head, and we got to take care of the house. There's 6 people in this house. There's a mess. Saturday morning, that's when you get paid, right? So there's actually there's additional chores. You get paid for that. and that asset base now that you've accumulated is for X, Y, and Z, which you can go buy. And a lot of it's just for extra toys or whatever they want to buy. So, and again, you see, you start to learn about your kids too, because, we all manage money differently. Some get money and it's straight out the door. Some of us hoard it, right? Or somewhere in between. And so with our 4 kids, I can already tell you who our spenders are, right?
Yeah.
So like my 10-year-old boy, he spends it like, if his chores I'm going to do my chores from 10 to 10:30. Like he's already at 9:59, he's already put the thing in the cart for Amazon to spend his money that he's about to earn. Right. So now I can, as a parent, start working with him to teach him the value of, I know he's going to have a tough time with saving money.
Yeah.
So I can work with him on saving money. Right. So you're not just helping the kids, but you're actually helping yourself on how to parent your kids around the fundamentals of money. Because if you have more than one kid, they're going to think about and work with money differently, just like maybe you and your spouse do. You have to work on that, right? Same with your kids. You got to figure out like how do your kids think financially, and start to like shape your kids and nurture them in the areas like, okay, we need to work on saving, and here's the value of saving and compounding. And hey, your brother hasn't been spending, and he makes less than you every week by $2, and he's got way more because he's been compounding it in his bank account, right? It's like, well, and now he can buy a big thing versus you've been buying all these little things, right? So you start working on like going back to the psychological side of money. It's a big piece of it. So that's one of the added benefits of like going through this process with your kids at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, I'm just curious on that, Kevin, just a bit of a follow-up on question. Both with your kids, because I've seen this a little bit with my kids' spending habits. They're often shaped by their peers, which is, I'm very thankful for the fact that they've grown up in a community like this where most people have pretty healthy attitudes toward money. Um, I'm curious, just both with your own kids level, but also maybe at a higher level with clients, how much of people's attitudes towards giving and saving and spending are shaped by the peers that they have.
99%. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll tie it into giving for sure. I think we see it here at LCS, right? Like the percentage of people giving to the campaign is so small. And I think it's people talk in communities, and it's like, well, I'm not doing much. So I'm not going to do much. It's just, what are people around us doing?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I think that's a big piece of it. And we see it with CPP, like Canadian Pension Plan. Everyone we talk to is like, yeah, I already took it at 60, 62, whatever. Like the average age in Canada is 62. The best time for 99% of us is age 70. Like if you want the maximum dollar amount. But when you ask people, it's like, well, my neighbor took it or my coworker took it then or whatever, right? It's like, it's my peers. It's people around me. That's what they're doing. And so that's a big part of our education on YouTube is, hey, here's what you're probably hearing in your little circle of friends. Here's the reality and here's the data. And so we actually jump into software and show like, here's how it actually works. So it's not like he said, she said, it's like he said and reality,
Mhm.
right? So, putting actual data behind it. But yeah, like to go back to your question, Adam, like 100% people do with their money what their neighbors do and friends do and coworkers do and peers do around them.
Mhm.
We see it in our driveways. We see it how we, go to restaurants. We see it how the giving, right? It's through every single dollar that we spend. Yeah.
Yeah, a big part of this 2030 vision to see a community that's experiencing and continually experiencing God's faithfulness across generations is we want to be a people that are not only generous but hospitable. And Adam, I know Adam Wolders, you've talked about some core values that you hold in your household. I'd love to hear maybe those two and how they inform not only just these practices with others, but how that might even be. I think one of them is hospitality, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just really quickly, I had this epiphany with my wife. We do so much reading and thinking about strategic planning and leading communities and all these sorts of things. And of course, it's what I do in my day job. And so it was like, okay, well, why aren't we doing this for our family? And my wife jokes that she's the executive director, CEO of our household. I'm just the CFO. Um, and that's fine, that works. But yeah, so we've gone the whole process that you would with any healthy business. We have and we boil it down to two.
Mhm.
Two, there's probably a third there too, but the two core values we have as a family is hospitality is one of them and hard work is the other one. And that's an easy answer. When my daughter says, "Hey, why do I have to do such and such?" Well, because hard work is a value of ours.
Yeah.
And it just becomes ingrained in the culture of our home.
Totally. Well, that's just it. Yeah. How do we ingrain that culture through our core values of connect and thrive and equip? Adam, what's
Yeah.
out of
So
Bornn?
I would say, like, within a family, you got to run it like a business, right? Like, what is your, like, our family, I won't put this on here, but our family has a vision statement, a mission statement. We have a word of the year, and we have 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals written down. I can give them to you today, right? Now that's part of a group of accountability guys that we meet with every Thursday morning. So that's part of our thing. I sit down with staff and go through all that. But I encourage every household to have a vision statement, a mission statement, a word of the year that connects kind of to what you guys are doing as a family, and share it with your kids, right? Like, actually talk about, like, this is the vision of our family. With the house build that we're doing right now, a big part of it is, here's a vision of that house. Like, here's what we want it to be like, to feel like, to be used for. Like, and Steph and I have said, like, after 3 years, if it hasn't done that, we'll sell it. It doesn't make sense for us. But again, are you bringing your kids into that, right? So there's the money piece of it, but there's the why are we doing stuff? Like, why do we give to LCS? Why are we giving to the middle school? Why do we support the golf tournament? Why do we do all this stuff? If they know the vision and the mission behind what we're trying to do as a family, then it all aligns, right? And they're like, okay, I get it now, right? And I talk to my kids a lot about my business and what I do, and hiring people and firing people and doing, like, the process, right? I want to teach them about that, because I think, again, going back to market day, I think teaching kids, they're not all going to run businesses. In fact, most won't, but they're all going to work for a business. And if they can understand how businesses work, they're going to be a better employee. They're probably going to get promoted more, make more money and all that, because they know if they can understand the core values of the company, there's more potential for them. So many employees don't understand what the purpose of their company they work for does, right?
Yeah.
But it starts at the young age in your home.
And there's probably right now in this culture moment, there's a lot of conversation, I think, in the media, but just generally, turning on the television or whatever, of people not placing a whole lot of value in the work they do, or even really wanting to know what their company does. Just kind of more of a transactional mindset, I think, of that we are fighting, I think, as a school, to say, hey, that's not the kind of graduates we want to produce. We want people who see work as a calling, see work as something that is missional, that is investing in others, et cetera.
Yeah. And that's, our parents, almost more so our grandparents' generation of, you work for the same company for 30 or 40 years. Whereas now the average length, I think, 3 or 4 years, basically, people work for a company and then they turn over. So it's a different mindset going in, but you can continue to move jobs, but it doesn't mean you're not on mission for what you're doing. Right. So,
Yeah.
So
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
it'd be cool to circle back on the previous generation.
Yes.
My dad was in the RCMP for 37 years. It was one of 2 jobs that he ever had. That generation of folks are retiring or have retired. There's, in many cases, even without any financial planning whatsoever, a lot of these people are sitting on estates worth millions of dollars because they bought a house when it was $75,000. And then they might have inherited their parents' house. And so they're now, what is the message? Because we have a lot of these people in our community, and they're asking questions, and we hear this about, hey, how can I use this to be a blessing to others, to be a blessing to communities? How should I invest this? What are you hearing, or what kind of conversations are you having with those people, the people that are aging and they're in that they're trying to finish well?
Yeah, and that's super common. Like, a lot of our clients come to us and they're like, we know we have enough, but we don't know what this looks like. And I always tell people that there's 2 parts to estate planning. There's your documents, your power of attorney, and your will. So, when I die, here's who gets whatever's left. And if I can't make a financial or health decision, my POA says, here's the person that decides on that. So that's a notary or lawyer will put that together. And people always think, like, that's my estate plan. The reality is there's another 50%, I think almost more to it, where if there is anything left, how do you structure that in a way that's tax efficient, God-giving, generational wealth, that kind of stuff? And, that's what your financial planner should be doing for you. It's looking at like, okay, based on your spending through retirement, so your day one of retirement, based on how much you think you need and what you're going to spend down, you're going to have a nest egg of X. We can structure it in a way where, it all goes to your kids, grandkids, whoever, charity, whoever you want to leave it to on death. But why don't we look at, you know, giving it earlier, both to charity to reduce your tax bill or to people you're going to leave it to anyway, right? So there's a lot of estate planning there. There's, again, going back to, there's a lot of data around, people think generational wealth is passing money from a 90-year-old to a 70-year-old. And that's how it's been done generation after generation. If you can shuffle it down earlier, like if you can get like if someone's listening to this and they're 70 and your kid's 45 with a mortgage, if you could gift them $250,000 today and they could be mortgage free, that's what that does for them. They can help out their kids. They can be more generous in their giving because they have more cash flow. So that is generational wealth. And so giving money while you're still alive. But also the whole idea around, and there's two types of, I've made a lot of wealth. It's, we bought the house for 75 grand. It's worth, 2.5 million now. There's also, we come across a lot, a non-registered investment account, with a cost base of 100,000, it's worth $1 million. So they have a huge tax bill sitting there. And a lot of people don't realize you can actually donate those in kind and you never pay the capital gains tax. You get the full, so in that case, $1 million, $1 million donation credit. The charity then just sells it. They have $1 million and you got your tax credit. The charity doesn't pay the capital gain. It's one of, as far as I'm aware, it's the only double tax benefit Surrey has out there right now. So it's super unique and not enough people are taking advantage of it.
Where would I go to find out about that?
Talk to your accountant or financial planner, or even give me a ring. We'll put my contact, I think, at the bottom of this summer. Contact Kevin or Adam and, connect with you and just explain how it works. It's very easy. There's platforms that do it, like LCS will take a direct donation. I know that. There's other platforms out there. GiveWise is one that I use. I'll transfer shares into there.
Yeah, we get a lot of folks who make donations through GiveWise.
Yeah. Okay. So we use GiveWise, Steph and I personally. So every year from our non-registered accounts, we have some gains that we want to carve out. We'll shuffle that money off to GiveWise. We get the full donation credit for whatever the shares are worth at that time. The capital gain is just basically wiped away. GiveWise will immediately share it. That money's sitting in our giving account that we can, send off to LCS or wherever. So very simple, $25 fee. GiveWise takes care of all of it. It takes 1 or 2 minutes of my time.
So for those people though who have heard capital gains, what is break that down as succinctly as you can for that 18 to 75-year-old who's heard the term but doesn't fully grasp the implications of what that means.
Okay, so let's say you bought Tesla stock back in the day and you put $100,000 into Tesla and now it's worth $1 million. You have a $900,000 gain. So right now in Canada, and there's kind of changing rules about capital gains, but let's just go back into 50% of it is taxable. So you sell your Tesla shares for $1 million. 900 of that is a gain. Half of it is taxable. So now $450,000 is added to your income that year. And in Canada, we're in a progressive tax system, meaning that the more you earn, the more percentage of tax you pay. So let's just say, simple example, you're paying a 50% tax bill on that. So you're going to owe $225,000 of tax on the sale of those Tesla shares.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you had donated those, you would have got a full donation credit. The charity would have had $1 million in their pocket and CRA would have collected zero. And so a lot of people I talk to, like 100%, say, I want to pay less tax. But then they don't employ strategies like this, right? And this is where it goes back to a giving heart because, I've talked to clients about this and they're like, yeah, but Adam, at the end of the day, even if I paid $225 in tax, I'm still left with $775,000. Whereas if I give it away, I have nothing. Even after my tax credit, max I'd have is $450,000, $500,000. So I still have less in my pocket. Yeah, of course, data is data. But if you're looking to give her up the heart to give, which, I encourage everyone to do, giving shares where you have a capital gain is a very tax efficient way. To the point where part of our annual giving that Steph and I map out, when it comes time to give, I'll always look at like, okay, well, do we have any shares that have gains that we could just clip off? Because I'd rather do it that way than write, check out of our bank account kind of thing. So, yeah. So if you have, it could be a vacation property. You bought a vacation property.
Well, that was my next question. Does this work with properties?
Yeah, yeah. Most charities will accept properties. It can be done. And again, if you're listening to this, you're saying, yeah, I have that cottage that I paid nothing for, and it's going to be an estate nightmare. Like, cottages can be a headache, or second properties, because you bought it many, many years ago. It's got a large gain on it. You have 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, maybe LCS. You have 7 kids, and you're not going to split it 4 ways, right? If I had a cottage, I don't want to split it 4 ways. My kids don't want to split that cottage 4 ways, but on death, there's a big tax bill. If I sell it now, I got to pay that. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. So, why not give it and then take the tax refund that you're going to get and distribute that out to your kids? So we've seen that. We've actually helped quite a few clients do that over the years. Again, very easy to do. It's a little bit different than, transferring your shares into like a GiveWise, but it can be done. But again, the net benefit there is that extra money is going to the charity, not CRA.
Yeah. How about primary residence wise there, Adam? Let's say downsizing from a bigger house, and you want to slowly invite your family into that gifting. You're moving in together. What does it look like for some of our grandparents that are moving post retirement?
Yeah, so a lot of people downsize, especially out of Vancouver and Toronto, and they'll downsize from let's call it a $3 million house in Vancouver to a $1 million house out here in Langley. They take that $2 million and they throw it in an investment, and it's earning, let's say, even 5% a year. That's $100,000 of gains every single year, typically interest income, because they're not high risk, and they're losing their old age security. And they're like, wow, this downsizing actually is creating more of a headache than anything. And so that's where we have the conversation to clients around, well, what's that $2 million that you just pocketed? Is it fully to fund your retirement? Probably not. It's probably going to your kids or grandkids when you pass away. So what can we do with that now? How can we start, okay, you're going to have some gain on there, some income off of there. So maybe we start donating some of that, right? To reduce or eliminate that tax bill altogether, or gifting to that next generation, or just having that mindset. Because a lot of people do downsize here in Canada, and they actually kind of stub their own toe doing it. They don't think through, like, pocketing $2 million is actually a bit of a tax issue. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, just selfish here, because we've been talking about this a lot.
Yeah.
And I was spending some time with a business last week, outside of K-12 education. Everybody's asking the same question: how is artificial intelligence currently changing what you do now, and what do you envision it changing what you're going to do in the future?
Yeah, AI has started to dip into financial planning a bit. I think, like, I use AI every day. Like, I use ChatGPT Premium every single day of my life. It could be to review a contract. It could for anything. But I think as far as financial planning goes, it helps educate. Like, what is an RSP? Break down what an RSP is as if I'm
And
18
you're finding that it's fairly reliable, not making a lot of mistakes in that area?
Yeah. I mean, 12 months ago, it had mistakes for sure. But I would say, it's not 100% reliable, but it's pretty close.
It's a
for
good
sure.
start.
It's
to
a
at least
great start. Yeah.
kind of get your foot in the door of understanding.
Absolutely. Even, if you typed in there, like, I'm 18, I make this much, I have $100 a month to save. Where should I save it? I can almost guarantee it'll tell you the FHSA or TFSA. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would say with confidence, it'll give you, I've never tested it, but so yeah, AI is helping. Like, some of my clients are like, oh, it's going to take your job. I'm like, no, it's helping me, because I don't have to answer all these, low level questions. I'll say, you can just go get them yourself now, which is super, freeing of my time and my team's time. I think it also empowers clients. So when they come to us, they have a better knowledge base, right? And we have like a terms and glossary we sent to all our clients. Like, hey, where's the language we use in our industry. So when you walk into the bank, and they spit out all this jargon at you, and you walk out, you're like, I don't even know what just happened. Like, it just blacked out for half an hour. AI will, again, help empower you walking into those meetings, the conversations with your kids and the family. All, like, how do I create a vision statement for my family? Ask ChatGPT. It'll walk you straight through the process, right? So I think that's where AI you can use to empower what you're doing in your business, in your personal life, family, kids, whatever it is. I think it'll take away a lot of low, certain types of jobs. I think any face-to-face job, teaching, I think it'll enhance teaching in a way. I think it'll change the way teachers teach.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's going to replace the teacher, right? It's just going to change the way we do it.
Maybe some aspects of it.
There's things that we've been doing for 100 years teaching that I think won't be necessary
Mhm.
or we'll spend very little time compared to what we used to.
Yeah.
But I also think it's placing it's very slowly and probably rapidly soon placing a far higher emphasis, probably in your industry as well, on the relational capacity of the people doing the work.
100%.
That becomes more important than it ever has before.
Yeah. And that's where YouTube has been great, because when people engage with our firm, they've watched, typically tens to hundreds of videos that we've pumped out there. So we built the trust. They know us. They know about my kids and family and my team and all that kind of stuff. So when they engage, they're engaging on a personal level. Yes, it's a professional service, but they're engaging on that personal level. I don't think that'll ever go away. Like, people, when they retire, yeah, there's already software out there where it's got a lot of AI built into it. It's not where it needs to be, but eventually it will be there, right? So someone could go online and pay $50 and get, an AI retirement plan. But then to kind of coach them through it. And again, retirement, going back to what I talked about earlier, is 10% financial. Okay, so you got that now. It's a 90% psychological. How do I actually do this? How do I walk into it? What are things that you've seen that I should be implementing? So yeah, it's that relational side of any business. I just don't see AI
No,
ever taking over that.
no.
Yeah. It seems to me like from our conversation, we can actually thrive when it comes to talking about money and being transparent about it and building purposeful practices. That's uncommon.
Mhm.
That's not actually something that we see a lot in a public sense, whether churches are having a sermon series on it and we move on and we go, oh, we survived. We're survivors in this.
The pastor was asking me for money.
Yeah. We want this community to experience joy when it comes to talking about generosity, when it comes to seeing that God has been faithful. Like, we've had conversations of the families that refinanced their house or mortgaged their house, going
Not once,
into
but twice. Some of
yeah,
them.
several times, right? Just to make this place a place where God would continue to show up across generations. So would love to hear maybe from the two of you, what are some invitations you have for this community so that we don't lose sight of that vision birthed by the founders, the people that set this school in motion. What would you invite our community into to see more and more of God's faithfulness with our finances?
Yeah, I think a big thing is to think about being like a courageous giver, which is not just giving a little, but giving a lot. And that lot is going to be different for everyone. Obviously, everyone's coming from a different space, but there's kind of 5 levels, and we went through this project, a village. But I encourage everyone to think about this. So there's kind of 5 levels of being a giver. There's the initial giver, which is just starting. And I encourage everyone, and this is what LCS is pushing now. Like, we want 500 families in on this, right? Um, and I encourage, even if it's $25 a month, like, it's not about making the difference at that point. It's about being involved. So again, that initial gift is step 1. Step 2 would be being a consistent giver, giving consistently to whatever organization, charities, whatever it is that you want to give to, but do it on a regular basis. Next thing is being intentional, like actually purposefully giving, like not just like, it's something I'm doing because I'm kind of forced, like be intentional about it. The fourth is surrender giving. So really everything's driven from the giving aspect. And my wife's really good at this. She's got that gift for like, no, like, we're going to give and then we'll figure out whatever else we're doing. Right. And even with like, the campaigns that we get involved with, it's always like, what's the number? And then we'll figure out how to pay for it after. If we have to take a second mortgage or do whatever, we'll do that.
Or what's the number, and we'll figure out if we can still afford the vacation that we were planning.
Mm.
Well, and that's like, again, we've gone through it with LCS a bit. We're going through it with Village right now too, where we had our number and then we upped our number, right? And it was like, okay, this is an uncomfortable number. Now this is a courageous number, right?
Yeah.
And I think everyone, I really encourage everyone. I'm saying that to encourage others to like step out of your comfort level. Like, give a number that you never thought you could be able to give, right? Like, just a number so mind blowing that, is obviously not going to bankrupt you, but is going to put you in an uncomfortable position where you can't do the things you typically do or want to do for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
But that might be also that catalyst for that sort of disciplined lifestyle that is actually good for us.
100%. Goes back to like, what's in your driveway? How often are you going out? Can you actually afford it? Right? So if you're spending come across people that spend thousands of dollars per month on vehicle payments, but they won't give $100 a month to school, church, wherever, right? There's a disconnect there. And again, it's not a judgmental thing. It's an encouraging thing. Like, try and be a courageous giver with your money, and think about how much would hurt to give, and then go a little bit beyond that and like feel the pain point from it, because we've seen it, like Steph and I have seen it again and again, of like, anytime we have a number, we're like, okay, we're going to give this. We don't know where it's going to come from. Like, God shows up like instantly. And not that that happens every time or you expect it to happen, but we've seen like that after effect of like being courageous with our gifts and God coming in and saying, "Yeah, I got you on this one," right? Which is crazy to feel and see and whatever. We never expect it or want it, but God works in different ways.
Absolutely.
So we've seen a lot. And then the last one, number 5, would be kind of a lifetime giver. So this comes down to like capital campaigns. What you guys are doing here at LCS is like, this is bigger and beyond us. Like, this is for our grandkids or great grandkids. It's not about us today. And we talked offline earlier. If you're a family that your kids are now in high school and moving on, it's like, well, we're not going to take advantage of the middle school. It's like, that's not what it's about. It's about your grandkids or your great grandkids that are going to go through that middle school and the impact it's going to have. And it may not even be for your kids or grandkids. It may be for your neighbors or someone that it's going to deeply impact and like change the generations to come for a family that doesn't even know the Lord at this point, right? So that's more of the concept and the mindset you have to have. But yeah, going back to just for everyone listening to this, like, think about how you can be a courageous giver. And it all starts with that number 1, right? Like, being the initial giver, but try and get that hard mindset around the courageous giving.
Well, and we find that too, that for folks to go from I haven't given to a church before to now I am, or I haven't given to LCS and now I am, like that's where there's just a huge relational investment of trying to help people sort of make that first decision and live in that way. We're aware of so much research in the secular world that sort of says, I don't understand why people aren't doing this more. They will be healthier, they will be happier, they will be more joyous, and they'll actually be, over the long term, a much greater return on their investment of giving their money away than almost any other thing they could do.
100%. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Adam, you've been talking about the 500. What's your invitation?
Well, yes, our invitation to 500 is just so aware of these is we've been going out and talking to people who've been a part of the school community for 70 years, and just so aware of that. So many of us who are benefiting from the school and the education that our kids are getting, the relationships that I've said this a few times. We're drinking from wells we didn't dig, and somebody somewhere else along the continuum of time decided, hey, I'm going to sacrificially give to the school, and they've at every step of the way that these buildings have emerged, and they've been sufficient for the time that we are in them. And I'm certainly, if somebody had not done that along the lines, my kids would not be here. And so that's the big heart motivation for me, is that I want to dig a well for somebody else in the future who will also be able to drink from it.
Yeah.
And have this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, we want to thank our listeners for listening in, and we really hope that this has been an equipping kind of conversation where you and your families would experience more of God's faithfulness across generations, the generations we don't even yet see. That as each of us have kids here at the school, we've been impacted by families that have gone before us, and we want to continue to invite you listeners and families tuning in to catch a bit of that vision of who we are as a generous people, a people trying to be faithful to God who's been faithful to us. So thank you for tuning in. We always welcome your engagement with us. You can reach us at podcast@langleychristian.com, and we look forward to sharing some more episodes about the Langley Christian of 2030.